What is up, everybody? It is Deep Shot Garry back for episode 5. They said we wouldn't get to episode 4, remember? And now here we are for episode 5. Thank you. It's Tuesday. It's 7 p.m. That's why we're here. CFB Only with your boy Deep Shot Garry. Got a packed show tonight. We're going to be talking most anticipated games of 2026. We're going to talk about LSU and USC's football schedules. Now, just a sneak preview, USC's football schedule, not one of those Big Ten small weak ones. All right, actually some real deal Holyfield stuff. And we're going to talk about that. And then I'm also going to give you some dark horse Heisman candidates, not somebody that's, in the top 10 of the FanDuel odds, basically. I'm going to give you some guys that you need to be on the outside looking in and you need to be paying attention to. So, without further ado, we will get going here in a second. I just wanted to make sure, as always, I remind everybody, give me a follow on Instagram and TikTok. All right? Don't be one of those people that just watches, doesn't follow, doesn't subscribe to the channel. There's no reason to do that. There's none. Why would you do that when you could be a follower, when you could be a subscriber, when you could support the dream? I know everybody in here's that listening or watching's got dreams. Don't be somebody that has that likes to see people fail. Want to see me succeed? Hit the follow button, hit the subscribe button. We're climbing. March Madness, we're posting March Madness content on the Instagram and TikTok. We're posting all college football stuff on the YouTube. If you love college football, you love college basketball, whatever you want to hear, I'm here for you. All right, so without further ado, let's go ahead and get into first segment here. Most anticipated games in 2026. Now, there are plenty of wherever you come from, there's plenty of games you're going to be looking forward to. All right. If you're a Tennessee fan, you're probably looking forward to all the SEC games. If you're a USC fan that we're going to talk about later, you're looking forward to all the games you're going to be playing, right? Well, these are for the college football public, and I picked 5 because honestly, I thought it was going to be a lot harder. I really did. I thought this was going to be a difficult list to kind of shrinking. I thought this was going to be a little tough to only make so many teams or so many games worth, and I only had so much of a graphic to make. But it really wasn't that much. When you look at the home run hitters, like these are the ones that all odds are going to be locked in on. Now, I'm as big as a college football fan as the next guy, so I know there's plenty of other games that are, when we get there, could be as big as these, or when, it's week 4 and all of a sudden we start looking at week 8 and, Texas is playing LSU and we're like, oh, wow, that's going to be a huge one. I get those. But in terms of where we are right now in mid-March, which, by the way, I don't know if anybody can tell, the sun's still out. That's a big deal, right? That is a huge deal. The sun's still out. So with all of that, these are the 5 biggest games, most anticipated games I've got in 2026 so far. Here's the list. Here's a good cut for myself when I edit the video for the YouTube. Most anticipated games in 2026. I'll start with the first game I've got. Now, week 1, just to preference this, I looked at week 1, and we're going to talk about LSU schedule here later in the show, but LSU Clemson was one that maybe had some juice to it, but that's not something I think, maybe other than the fact that LSU is playing its first game under Lane Kiffin, the Dabo Sweeney, everybody loves to watch him fail or watch him do silly stuff metric. I just don't think it's that big of a home run hitter compared to these other ones. I also think when you look at the rest of the week 1 schedule, it's not too deep. There's like a Notre Dame, Wisconsin, Ole Miss, Louisville, Auburn, Baylor. Those are a couple matchups we've got going on. But other than that, there's not a lot of home run hitters going on in week 1 in the college football landscape. Now, week 2 is where we have our first one, though, and that is Ohio State at Texas in week 2. Now, if I've talked about this game multiple times already, but it's such a heavy hitter, so you had to know this one. You had to know this one was coming. Ohio State is going to Texas in week 2. It's going to be a night game. It's going to be on ABC or ESPN, whichever one you want to call it. This is obviously, SEC, Big Ten, juggernauts going at it. Whoever wins this game is going to be seen as a force to be reckoned with. Whoever loses this game is going to have, only one loss left to bear, based on the system we have right now. Remember, Texas lost last year, then they slipped up twice. more. Everybody thought they had a chance, or at least an argument to get in. And, because they lost in week 1, they played Ohio State, they didn't get in. So now this is the same thing. Texas, Ohio State, win this game. Texas, you have got to win this game for the reputation of the SEC. For Ohio State, it's, gotta be able to look themselves in the mirror and be humbled a little bit if you're Texas, because you cannot lose this game at home at night. Nope, can't happen. Cannot happen. For Ohio State, though, that would be huge if you could go in there and win that game. Now, I don't think a lot of people would give a lot of slack to Ohio State for losing this game. It's going to be a tough game to win. At least I think so. Who knows? Ohio State or Texas go out there and just be awful, and we could be in a whole nother situation where Arch Manning just really isn't that good. But I'm going to bank on it. That's probably not going to be the case, so it's going to be a tough game at Texas in week 2. Week 3, no intro needed. LSU is going to Ole Miss. The Lane Kiffin Bowl is going to be absolutely extraordinary. I don't really know how else to say this, but with everything that happened this past season and the offseason, right? This whole last, let's call it, we're in March now, since early November, mid-October, so 5-6 months, it has just been absolute chaos for the Ole Miss. And really, not even much of the LSU side. They kind of just sitting there laughing, watching it happen. But the Ole Miss coaching stuff has just been nuts. Everyone knows what happened, right? If you don't, you lived under a rock. You're probably not watching a show. Lane Kiffin left Ole Miss before the playoffs after getting them to the best season ever. Went to LSU, yada, yada, yada. And took a bunch of their players. Not their quarterback and their running back, though. But anyway, Lane Kiffin's going back to the place that he resurrected his career at so early in the season, too. Ole Miss beat LSU last year, kind of got the wheels starting on firing Brian Kelly last year. And LSU's got to win that game. Like I say, Texas and Ohio State, Texas needs to really win that game, and I don't think a lot of people would be upset at Ohio State for not winning that game. Same thing I think applies here for LSU going to Ole Miss in this game. Like, LSU has to win this game. This has to be a win for Lane Kiffin. Because if you lose to the team that you left, and oh boy, it's not the end of the season, but again, there's only so many losses you can have. And if that's going to be one of them to Ole Miss, I just don't think that's a good situation for you to be in, Lane Kiffin. You've got to beat Ole Miss in week 3. And then week 4 and week 5 happen. Again, there's probably some really good games. But I'm telling you, again, when we get to September, I will probably go, circle this one in week 4. Circle this one in week 5. But for right now, in mid-March, week 6 is the next big kahuna game, and that is Georgia at Alabama. And you just know, because every time, other than the last time, these two teams play, it's always a classic, okay? It's just, obviously, I don't really call it much of a rivalry. It's just, two teams that usually play a lot of big games. So, if you want to call it a rivalry, you can. But if we're calling it a rivalry, Georgia has the last win in the rivalry. But either way, Alabama's won the last 2 games in the regular season. And so this is a third straight regular season game between these two teams. This one's going back to Tuscaloosa. And if Georgia won the SEC championship game against Bama, right? They kind of got the little monkey off their back. But to really, and as Georgia fan here, to really set in stone that we've got to get it going, that we've established something here. Got to win this game, right? Like, you can't be lollygagging around anymore. You got to go to Alabama, especially now the way people are talking about Alabama this season. It's like Alabama's going to go 8-4 the way some people are talking. So Georgia's got to be one of those 4 losses, you would think. And I've said on this show, I think Georgia's going to be very good this season. So I think that game right there, just because the logos and you look at the first 2 we matched up with, right? You just expect Ohio State, Texas, the rematch, the logos, LSU, Ole Miss, the story of Lane Kiffin, Georgia, Alabama, the history of the 2 teams, and usually every game is insane. So that's where I'm at with that. Week 7, it has a banger, and it's Ohio State at Indiana. This is obviously a rematch Big Ten championship game. And this is, if we've talked about Indiana and Ohio State's schedule on the show in the last couple of weeks, Indiana, this is their first real game they're going to play. Obviously, Ohio State's playing Texas. I'm pretty sure Ohio State goes to Iowa before this game too. This is the first big game Indiana's going to play. They're going to be playing, the High School of the Blind all 6 weeks before this, pretty much. So this is going to be their first real football game Indiana's going to play. And it's going to be mid-season while Ohio State's kind of took some bumps and bruises. And I'm just going to let you know right now, Indiana's going to be 6-0 when they play this game. And Ohio State could be 5-1. So, depending on when their buys are. But I'm just telling you, Indiana will be undefeated. And Indiana this will be where they can cement pretty much they're going to the playoffs again in this game. And now if Ohio State gives them some work, who knows? I don't have that feeling that's going to happen, but where, would you have believed me if I told you 3 years ago that Ohio State and Indiana Week 7 was just going to be an absolute banger in 2026? It was going to be something you were looking forward to in March. I don't know if you would. I don't know if you would believe me. Week 10 is the next one, and it's the last one I've got circled on here for now. Miami is going to Notre Dame. This is another one kind of in that same LSU Ole Miss category, just because it's the story of everything that happened last year, right? Miami gets into the playoffs over Notre Dame after Notre Dame had been in the playoffs the whole entire time, and then at the very end they put Miami in. Then Miami goes on and plays for the national championship, while Notre Dame doesn't even play in a bowl game. That game's gonna be freaking epic. All right, and this is awesome that it's last year was in week 1 on a Sunday. Which is always cool. But the fact that this is going to be week 10, these teams are going to be pretty established at this point, right? We're going to know who these teams are, and this is going to have insane playoff implications, mainly because both these two teams have really easy schedules, and both teams could be undefeated at this point of the season. When they get to this game, if they're both not undefeated, or there should be at most one loss between the two teams when they get to this game. One team should be undefeated. This should be a top 10 game. Circle it right now. Week 10, Miami Notre Dame should be a top 10 game. If it's not, something has gone terribly wrong for one of those two teams, and that is something we will laugh at around here. But Miami Notre Dame Week 10 right now, as we're thinking about it. As I'm thinking about it, it's got to be one of the best games that I'm looking forward to. And it's in November, so we got a long time till then, right? All right, let's move on. Next subject, schedule talk. I've been having fun doing this segment, so we've talked about 4 SEC teams: Georgia, Alabama, Texas, and Florida. And now we're going to talk about LSU. And then we've also talked about 4 Big Ten teams: Ohio State, Indiana, Michigan, and Oregon. We talked about their schedules. So now we're going to talk about LSU and USC. LSU, we talked about them a second ago. They have that really big game against Ole Miss. Now, they've got some other really good bangers, too, as well on the schedule. Again, I've said this before. These SEC schedules are absolutely bonkers if you're paying attention to them. If you're watching the show, you know what I'm talking about. But absolute bangers that LSU has all 2026. Welcome to the 9-game SEC schedule, ladies and gentlemen. All right, here we go. Let's talk about it. Starts out in week 1. We got the rematch against Clemson, which, let's talk about this, a can't-lose game for LSU. Lane Kiffin cannot lose his first game at home to Clemson. Okay, Clemson's one of the most reeling teams in college football. Last year they were supposed to be really good. You know about Clemson, right? They were supposed to be good. They weren't good. Now they're going back, and LSU has 50,000 people coming to the school to play football for them. So if they were not going to win their first game at home, which will probably be a night game against Clemson, then something's wrong, and that's going to be a tough start. So they got to win that game, which I think they will. But could you imagine if Clemson beat LSU in week 1? Woo! The ACC fans would be out ready to go. They would be absolutely ready to go. Last year was the first time these two teams played in the regular season ever. I think they played 4 times before that, and they were all in bowl games. National championship a couple years ago, and some other bowl games, some Sugar Bowls, things like that. Interesting stat. Louisiana Tech in week 2. Got to play your in-state rivals. Respectable. Number 3, Ole Miss. Week 3, Ole Miss. I talked about that a second ago. One of the most anticipated games of 2026. At Ole Miss. I mean, again, at Lane Kiffin, it's got to win week 1. Lane Kiffin's got to win week 3 too. I mean, you got to. Week 1 and week 3 have got to be wins. Week 2, obviously, as well. But week 1 and week 3, you talk about the gotta-have-it games for Lane Kiffin. The first one and the third one. Circle them. Because if you lose those games, whoo, imagine an LSU 1-2 start. But you close your eyes and think about the memes that you would see after Lane Kiffin and the LSU Tigers are 1-2. And Ole Miss is probably 3-0. Trinidad Chambliss is the odds-on favorite to win the Heisman. Could you imagine if LSU started their season 1-2, Ole Miss is sitting at 3-0, just freshly beat LSU. Trinidad Chambliss is the Heisman favorite. Cinema, huh? Cinema. I wonder if that'll happen. Week 4, Texas A&M. At home. LSU's got this one at home. No, wait. Yes, they got this one at home. Is that right? Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe LSU played Texas A&M at home last year. So 2 years in a row, I guess. They get them at home. Wild how that works. A&M's won the last 2. 4-0. 4-0 at this point. I wrote down 4-0 at this point. A&M has won the last 2. 4-0 at this point. I don't know what that meant. I forgot what that meant. But I know Lane Kiffin is 3-1 versus Texas A&M all time. Oh, 4-0 at this point. That's what I remember. What if LSU wins? So I know I just said Clemson and Ole Miss. What if they win against LSU? LSU's 1-2. Let's flip it around. Let's say Ole Miss or LSU wins those games and they beat A&M. It's LSU 4-0. If LSU is 4-0 after Texas A&M, what are they ranked? If they've beaten Clemson at Ole Miss, and they've beaten Clemson, Ole Miss, and Texas A&M, and don't forget Louisiana Tech, and they're 4-0, what is LSU ranked going into Week 5? Going into their game against McNeese State, where are they ranked? Someone tell me. Week 5 they play McNeese State, which I believe is also an in-state game. So got to play your in-state rivals, I understand. Week 6, they play Kentucky at Kentucky. This is the first time since 2021 these two teams are playing. Kentucky actually won that game, 42-21. Before that game, it had been since 2014 since these two teams played. I remember an LSU Kentucky game, not the Bluegrass Miracle, but there was a game in 2007 when LSU actually won the national championship, and that was an insane game. That was their second loss of the season. I think LSU and Kentucky were like rivals for a little bit, or at least it was the last week of the season. It was super weird. But anyway, LSU's going to Kentucky in Week 6, so that'll be something, huh? Who's interested in that? I mean, Kentucky, Will Stein, Kenny. What was his name? The quarterback's name? Kenny something. Kentucky QB. Kenny Mitchie. Should be fun. Week 7, Mississippi State. First time since 2023, Mississippi State's the worst team in the SEC. I've said it multiple times. I'll say it again. So LSU should win that game. And I'm telling you, that's what I'm saying. If I can just backpedal for a second. If they're 4-0 after that A&M game, I mean, they get McNeese, Kentucky, Mississippi State. They're probably 7-0, right? They're probably 7-0, you would think. If A&M is 4-0, that means they're 7-0. Not that's A&M. If LSU's 4-0, that means they're 7-0. Close your eyes and imagine a world where LSU is 7-0, heading into mid-October, late October. Lane Kiffin's first year. Cinema. Okay. And then week 8, they go to Auburn. First time since 2023. Old SEC West game. LSU owns the series all time, 30-24. I love that we're getting this type of game back. The Tigers versus the Tigers. LSU, Auburn, and Missouri. 3 Tigers in the SEC. 2 Bulldogs as well. I think that's the only same mascots. Off the top of my head, I don't think we have any other Wildcats or Crimson Tides or Razorbacks. I don't think so. Okay, anyway. Auburn. I've talked about Auburn very nicely on this show before. I think that should be a fun one. So, I mean, but if, again, it's LSU 7-1 at this point, 7-0 at this point. What's Auburn's record? We haven't really talked about Auburn's schedule. We actually did last week a little bit. It's a tough one. Where are they at this point? Week 9, LSU gets a bye week before they play Bama in week 10. Haven't beaten Bama since the sorry, I had to sneeze. Has not beaten Bama since the Jaden Daniels 2022 game. The game Brian Kelly's first season was the last time LSU beat Alabama. Remember that? That was Bama's second loss of the year. Crazy. Alabama had to play Kansas State in the Sugar Bowl that year. You guys remember that? I remember that. Anyway, the game's at home. Again, let's just keep thinking. LSU's 8-0. Got it off a bye week. Got Bama at home. Let's think about it. Let's think about the electricity in Baton Rouge. You know Paul Skeens and Livy Dunn are going to be in Baton Rouge if that's happening. You know that's a fact. All right, week 11, they got Texas. First time since 2019. Oh, also, Lane Kiffin's never beaten Alabama in his life as a coach. Texas, first time in week 11, they played Texas. The first time since 2019 when the Joe Burrow game at Texas. Texas 9-8 all time against LSU. Again, I love Lane Kiffin. I love the antics. Steve Sarkisian, it's another one. It's an all-time, coach. Which coach wants to be, the clicks more? Which one wants wants more people to look at him? This is an all-time game for that. All-time. Week 12, Tennessee. First time since 2022, Tennessee won that game. That was the year Tennessee started 9-0. Was number 1 for a second. That'll be interesting. I mean, at this point in the season, late in the season, for LSU and Tennessee to be matching up at Tennessee, where Lane Kiffin used to coach at Tennessee. Everybody remembers all the mustard bottles and golf balls that they got thrown at him. What does this look like? What does this LSU team look like? Because this back half stretch of Bama, Texas, Tennessee, and Arkansas, now that we've gone through this together, it's very they need to be 8-0 before they get to that bye week, huh? They need to be 8-0, at least 7-1 before they get to that bye week. Interesting, man. Interesting. Then they finish off with Arkansas at Arkansas, which I don't think should be that too. But back-to-back games in the year on the road at Tennessee, at Arkansas. But before that, they get Alabama and Texas at home, which is huge. So that's interesting. That's LSU's 2026 schedule. We'll see where they fall again. I think that everything before that bye week is crucial. Very crucial. All right. USC 2026 schedule. We've talked about Big Ten schedules in the past. We've talked bad about them. We've laughed at them. I'm going to be honest, not a lot to laugh at here. Not a lot to laugh at here if you're looking at USC's 2026 schedule. It is. I know we did Ohio State's, and I talked about that one and how that one was pretty tough. I think this one's tougher. I'm just be honest. I think this one's tougher. Now, the first 3 games are, of course, not going to be tough. Other than Ohio State and Michigan, I don't think any Big Ten team's first 3 games are tough. You got. Oh, dude, I lost my notes there. Sorry. I don't know what happened there. Oh, no. Oh. Whoops. Anyway, San Jose, Fresno, and Louisiana Raging Cajuns is what they'll be playing weeks 1 through 3. Riveting stuff. Week 4, they go to Rutgers, and that is an over 2,000-mile trip for a conference game. Insane. USC won this game in 2024. It's the only time they've ever played before. Rutgers went to USC that time. USC won. The Rutgers, I've said this before. I'm not really sure, how many opinions. So USC should be 4-0, right? USC should be 4-0. That's exciting. That's exciting if you're a USC fan. USC should be 4-0. Guaranteed. A deep shot guarantee. USC will be 4-0 in 2026. Deep shot guarantee. Week 5, Oregon. Here's a fun stat. USC has not beaten Oregon since 2016. The head coach in 2016, Clay Helton, the Georgia Southern head coach. USC has not beaten Oregon in so long. From way back in the Pac-12 days was the last time USC beat Oregon. So they got them at home, though. Absolutely huge. They get them at home. And when we keep going down the schedule, I'll tell you why. Week 6, they play Washington at home as well, which Washington's going to be sneaky, especially for a team like USC, who's not overbearingly physical or overbearing, so much more talent than a team like Washington, you would think. But again, USC has not beaten Washington since 2016 when Clay Helton was head coach. Starting to see a trend here, huh? It's been a while since USC's beaten Oregon or Washington, but they play them both, and they play them both at home, and they're going to be 4-0 when they play Oregon, so they got to win at least one of these games. Oregon and Washington, that's Pac-12 games right there, and middle of the season, and that's where we're going to find out. Circle the Oregon-Washington games for USC. That's where we're going to find out a lot about them. And then they go to Penn State. Again, funny enough, last time they beat Penn State, 2017 Rose Bowl, which was the 2016 season, Clay Helton's head coach. That was a Sam Darnold, Saquon Barkley game. You guys remember if you're real ball knowers. Absolute classic in Pasadena that year. But they go to Penn State. So they're going to go all the way from the west to the east. I've said nice things about Penn State. I said last week, I think they've got a pretty good schedule, favorable schedule. I think they'll be a good team. So, Oregon, Washington, Penn State, weeks 5, 6, and 7 for USC Trojans. Right now, I'm telling you, that is where we're going to find out a lot. Now, also, if you're looking at the schedule, this is the first schedule and one of the only schedules we're going to look at that has 2 bye weeks because they play in week 0. No, they don't play in week 0. Wait, do they play in week 0? Do they play in week 0? No, I don't believe they play in week 0. How did they do that? Actually, I thought that was that's a trick, huh? They don't even play in week 0 and they got 2 bye weeks? How'd they do that? How did they do that? Wow. Okay. I'm a little lost on how USC can have 2 bye weeks and not be playing in week 0. Okay. Take me for a spin here, huh? Take me for a spin. I don't know. We're going to figure that out. But anyway, they got 2 bye weeks. And then they go to Wisconsin. And they've USC is 7-1 all time. They won in 2024. The only time they ever lost to Wisconsin was 2015 Holiday Bowl. Absolutely insane. Okay, wait a minute. I think USC does play in week 0. They do play in week 0. Okay, I was tripping. They do play in week 0. It was my bad. Okay. Anyway, they play Wisconsin, 2 at Wisconsin, so they go to Penn State bye week, and then they have to go back to Wisconsin. So that's a lot of traveling there. But Wisconsin, another team, like how much you are worried about. But then they play Ohio State at home. So I'm telling you, they'll be 4-0, but it doesn't get a lot easier after that. They got Ohio State at home. These two teams used to play a lot in Rose Bowls back in the day. USC is 13-10 all time against Ohio State. Last time Ohio State won was 2017 Cotton Bowl. And then USC's last time beating Ohio State was 2009. Pete Carroll it was his last season there. So USC Ohio State, that's going to be some nostalgia right there. That's going to be a nostalgia game that we're going to be sitting back and watching in Week 10. Same week as Notre Dame, Miami. Huh? How about that? Week 11, bye week. So, again, 2 bye weeks. They do play in Week 0. And then Week 12, at Indiana. First time since 1982 that Indiana and USC are playing. USC has won all 4 games. Insane. First time these two teams are playing as Big Ten opponents. And I would assume, at this point in the season, thank God USC's got a bye week, right? They got to go to Indiana. Oh, it's a good thing they got 2 byes, dude, because they got to travel after both of them. That is crazy. That is absolutely insane, actually. Wow. Okay. Wow. And that's crazy for them to have the 2 bye weeks. They do have playing Week 0, but I didn't realize that. When I looked at the schedule a couple weeks ago, they weren't on the Week 0 slate. So that's on me. I'm upset I didn't know that. Okay. And then they finish off the season with Maryland and UCLA, which I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about Maryland and UCLA. I know Nico Amalivia is still the quarterback of UCLA. Maryland, I know they got that number one DN in the class or something. They got some random 5-star who, either just got paid loads of money or is just, one and done. I don't know, but either way, or maybe got sucked off or something. I don't know what his deal was, but yeah, that's USC's 2026 schedule, and I don't think it's that easy. Like, I think it's 4-0, like we mentioned. They'll get to Rutgers undefeated. They'll get past Rutgers, but then Oregon, Washington, at Penn State, bye week, at Wisconsin, Ohio State, bye week, at Indiana. That 6-game stretch. What is USC's record in that 6-game stretch right there? If they're 4-2 in that 6-game stretch, and then they win the last 2, playoff team. Playoff team. I'm telling you right now, playoff team. Will they do it, though? Who knows? Who knows? All right, and last segment, dark horse Heisman candidates. All right, now again, I'm talking guys that are not sitting in the top 10 of FanDuel odds. Okay? So I'm not talking about even Gunnar Stockton, dude. Like, he's sitting there, or Sam Levitt, or just go look at the top 10. Like, I'm not picking Arch Manning, or I'm picking guys. You'll see the list in a second. There's not a single guy on this list that has less than 2,500 odds, 3,500 odds. So just know this is what I mean when it's a deep shot. Okay, there's the Deep Shot logo on this graphic you're about to see. I'll just show it to you now. These are my dark horse Heisman picks. Now, I've talked a lot of nice things about Byron Brown the last couple weeks, so this should not be coming as a surprise to anybody. Again, last season, he had over 4,000 all-purpose yards. He had 3,000 passing and another 1,000 rushing, 29 passing touchdowns, and another 14 rushing. So he had 43 touchdowns last year. He's going to Auburn. He's going to hang out with his old head coach. He's going to play with a bunch of his old receivers, his old tight ends, his old running back. What's not to like? Other than a better competition he's got to play. But I'm telling you guys, USF last year, if they had any sort of defense, they would have been in the playoffs. And I don't think there would have been a lot of hoopla the way there was. USF had a scary offense, okay? Just ask the Florida Gators. Had to get that one in. But I like Byron Brown a lot. I like Byron Brown a lot to do something dangerous in 2026. I've said nice things about Auburn a million times. I think that Alex Golish and Byron Brown, I'm trying to think of a comparison of what they could be. Gene Chizik and Cam Newton, I guess. But I don't really even think that's on the same stratosphere. I don't know. But Byron Brown is massive. He has Cam Newton tendencies, okay? He's like the same. Lee, dude, I had his height pulled up. I don't know his height. Anyway, he's massive. And he's been really good in the full seasons he's played. So I'm going to freaking go with him. He's 6'3", 231. Massive. All right, and in my second one, I got Lenore Sellers. All right. Look, Lenore Sellers, again, plus 3,500 long shots. He's not in the top 10 for guys that are coming for this upcoming season. He's not one of the top 10 guys in the odds, right? So just looking at his stats from 2024, and I know 2025 was a rough year. 2024, let's just look at his passing stats. He had 65% completion percentage, 18 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. Okay, and then rushing in 2024, he had 674 yards rushing, 7 touchdowns. So he was 25 touchdowns, about 3,000 total yards, a little over 3,000 total yards. And then everybody said last year that coming into the season, he was going to be one of the dark horses. He was supposed to be like a first-round pick, okay? But they fired Mike Shula, okay? They've got Kendall Browse coming in there, Art Browse's son. If the offense is back for South Carolina, that means Lenore Sellers is back for South Carolina. That means he's probably a first-round pick again. And there's a lot of value in picking a guy like Lenore Sellers. I think my only concern about this guy is that he's got his decision making. He's got to be a little quicker, and he's got to maybe just take off sooner. His offensive line's got to be better, but the talent is all there. And I picked him last year as a dark horse as well. I don't really think he was that much of a dark horse. I think a lot of people were talking about him last year, but because he was, the 2024 season was so crazy. But I think now he's died off a little bit, and I think this is the time to grab him because I think they're called dark horses, right? And I should have just called them deep shot Heisman picks. I don't know, but it's such a miss by me, huh? But overall, what I'm saying is Lenore Sellers is without a doubt got great value if the South Carolina offense gets figured out. Do you trust Kendall Browse or not? Nick Harbor's still there. They've fixed the offensive line. They did well in the portal front of the offensive line. I think there's some value there. All right, and then John Mateer. Dude, John Mateer last year, plus 3,500. John Mateer last year, before he got hurt, was the Heisman favorite. I mean, I had a ticket on him. I had a ticket on John Mateer to win the Heisman last year. And then he was the Heisman favorite, and he hurt his thumb. And then things weren't really the same after that. And I don't really think he was that bad. The passing game wasn't there, but then they remember they played Alabama, and then it seemed like he kind of figured it out again, but unfortunately they lost, so it doesn't really matter. But, I mean, he had something going for a while. And he's still with Arbuckle, the OC, who he was with for Washington State. He's coming back. He's going to be his 5th year of college football. He's going to be he's going to be starting, this is his 4th year starting. This is going to be his 4th year starting. He's going to be fully healthy. If they can get it back to where he doesn't really, maybe he shouldn't be running as much. Like, if they didn't have a run game last year, Oklahoma. They spent all that money on Jay Nod, nothing happened. So I think if John Mateer is back to being fully healthy and Oklahoma figures out a run game, John Mateer is right back in the race. And yes, he is a dark horse because not a lot of people are picking him. I may throw some money back down on him. I did it last year. I may do it again. I'm talking myself into it right now. I like that pick. John Mateer. I like that one. Okay, and then my 4th one is C.J. Bailey, NC State quarterback. If you've watched this guy, he is another massive human being. Hold on. This guy I'm pretty sure is like 6'5". Hold on. I should have this stuff ready. I thought it was a long day. 6'6". He's 6'6". C.J. Bailey is 6'6", 210. He's a lanky guy. But, man, he's got a cannon for an arm. All right? And he's done pretty well at NC State the last couple years. He hasn't blown the place out of the water. I wish he'd run a little bit more. He's not as bulky, so he kind of maybe a little scared to get hit sometimes. But, dude, just last year he threw for 3,100 yards, 25 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. Year before that, he threw for 10 interceptions, which kind of concerns me. He's got to be a little bit better from turning the ball over. But, I mean, dude, it seems like he gets better every year. And if he had a really good team around him, this is the longest shot I've out of them all. If he had a really good team around him, he could be dangerous. Like, the fact that no one goes after C.J. Bailey in the transfer portal wows me. Maybe they don't know something. But that's the deepest of the deep shots that I've got. But I like C.J. Bailey a lot. Yeah, I like him a lot. I think that's a guy that will go to a combine one day, and people will be like, whoa. You know about this guy is the way they're treating Taylor Green in Arkansas right now. It's the same way they're going to treat C.J. Bailey. I promise you. Absolutely the same way. Just get some more meat on the bone. And then my last one is Aaron Philo. He's a Florida quarterback, probably going to be the starting quarterback this year, I would assume. He came with Buster Faulkner, the offensive coordinator from Georgia Tech. He was like the Gatorade Player of the Year in Georgia in high school, broke a lot of records like Deshaun Watson and Jake Fromm had from back in the day. Guy's an absolute beast from what I've heard. I've actually watched a couple games with him live. Last year I actually watched a game where C.J. Bailey and Aaron Philo played each other live on a Thursday night. So I think the guy, from everything I've heard, is really good. And if Florida is somewhat decent this year, it's going to be because of him. They've got a really good run game. They were able to keep Jaden Baugh. I've heard apparently they got a good team out there. I don't know. John Summerall didn't seem like he said that today. He didn't think it was that good, but I do think Aaron Philo is going to be a good quarterback if he is starting quarterback. So that's why I have got him down there. But I think if I'm going to pick one guy out of all five, I think John Mateer I'm talking myself into a lot. I think I personally am talking myself into John Mateer the more and more I look at this list. How about that graphic work, huh? Does anybody want to give me credit on that? If you're listening on YouTube, but a good graphic. All right, that wraps it up. I thought I was gonna have some more stuff to talk about. Got home at like 6:30 today, so really just don't have much more planned. But thanks for hanging out for the last 41 minutes. I appreciate it. Episode 5 in the books. We'll be back again next week. Hope everybody has a great rest of the week. Okay, again, the sun, it's not even down yet. All right, it is 7:42. The sun's still up a little bit, so enjoy that. Be back next week, Tuesday at 7 p.m. I appreciate you all, guys. Make sure you follow on Instagram, TikTok, subscribe to the YouTube. I'll be seeing you guys soon. Deep Shot out.